One of F1 2026's most fascinating engine tricks has been banned. So, John Noble, what's been clamped down on here and what do we know about why?
This was a trick that Mercedes and Red Bull were using. It was only for qualifying, and it was only for the final dash between the final corner and the timing line. And it basically was a way to avoid the ramp down rate, which is a kind of introduction rules to stop there being a sudden drop off in power. Teams are supposed to ramp down their rate, normally 50 kilowatts every second. So you come out the final corner and you ramp down. But these teams had found a way to get around this. There was an emergency software mode you could activate to shut the MGUK down. It meant you didn't have to do the ramp down. So you could run at the full 350 kilowatts for as long as possible, which gave you a speed boost. And in a speed boost in qualifying means a quicker lap time.
Exactly. So it was one of those great F1 examples of teams playing in the margins. Something that was absolutely not illegal was there. The FIA even knew that it would be taken advantage of. That's why the use of this mode came with a 60-second lockout of the MGUK, killed the MGUK completely after you'd used this mode. And that is pretty much the reason why it's the FIA has decided to take this action, isn't it, John? Because there was some annoyance from other manufacturers that had clearly looked into doing this and wasn't sure if they could replicate it. It was seen as a bit of a grey area. It wasn't designed to be a performance-enhancing aspect of the rules, but as usual, manufacturers had found a way to make it exactly that. But this never really felt like something, if it came to banning it, to clamping down on the trick being used, it never felt like something that would be done because, like, oh no, this isn't what the rules are meant to be. It's more about killing off the consequences, isn't it?
Yeah, this came to a head really in Japan. Mercedes and Red Bull had been spotted doing it in Australia. The other manufacturers were alert, but in Japan, it was spotted when Kimi Antonelli was running very slowly in practice. Max Verstappen had a similar problem. Alex Albon stopped on track. And it was all this similar problem that you could shut this MGUK down you activate the mode, the MGUK shuts down, but then you have no extra battery power. And that has consequences that if you lose turbo boost pressure, for example, you aren't on the throttle, you hit the wrong gear, it triggers problems. And it was these safety implications that both alerted rival teams and caused some concern. Ferrari spoke to the FIA. They were adamant that they understood this trick was legal. It was within the regulations. You could do it. The door was open, but they questioned whether it should be allowed because of this safety consequences. And the FIA spoke to both the Red Bull and Mercedes manufacturers in Japan, said, we're aware this is happening. We understand it's within the rules, but you should not have cars stopping on tracks in qualifying. That would be dangerous. And this in the end has become the trigger that we understand. The FIA has now written to teams. It said that this software mode they're exploiting, known as continuous offset, if it's activated, it can only be activated for emergency reasons. It cannot be activated for competitive gains.
Yep, and a lovely bit of F1 lexicon within that to make it needlessly confusing for people to understand, and to make it even more confusing, if you're interested in this sort of thing, don't go looking for it in the regulations because you won't find it. It's buried within a subset of the regulations, documents that get sent between teams, more and more of that. These engines and rules are so complicated that more stuff than ever is being kind of siphoned off to the side. If you do want to learn more about this engine trick, if we've not explained it in enough detail for you or clearly enough, you can check out the video that we made off the back of Suzuka, which covered it in a lot more detail. That will be on the screen, either here, wherever it ends up.
Do you remember 2007? That's the year F1's youngest driver Arvid Lindblad was born, Fernando Alonso started chasing his third F1 title, rookie Lewis Hamilton burst onto the scene, and Kimi Raikkonen emerged champion in a thrilling finale. And if you took out a car finance agreement in the last 20 years, then you might be interested to know we've partnered with Refund Club, who are helping thousands of people get their money back for missold car finance agreements, with the FCA expecting over $8.2 billion to be paid out to drivers in the UK. Simply enter a few details, then Refund Club takes care of the technical work, background checks, and agreement research behind the scenes. If your claim looks like it could be valid, their specialist law firm handles everything. See if you're owed a refund on any car finance agreements with a free 60-second check by scanning the QR code on screen or simply clicking the link in the video description. It costs you nothing to check and could potentially lead to thousands of pounds for just a minute of your time.
In terms of the why, John, you explained there the FIA has written to the teams. We know it's for this kind of safety implication. For me, the interesting aspect is basically just why it's been considered necessary, because you have a system here. The engines are very complicated. The MGUK is a massive part of it. The battery can't sustain the MGUK at full power for very long anyway. So teams are always going to try and find a way to eke out that little bit more. And we should stress, because the amount of energy you've got in your battery is limited. So if you want to use this mode, if you want to have that little bit extra 350 kilowatts for that little bit longer, that doesn't come for free. You have to trade that off again. You'll be deploying overall for slightly less time, but you'll be deploying more power for the time you are deploying. And we're talking hundredths of a second here, maybe a tenth, which is one of those, again, glorious F1 things where it's such a small performance thing, but it's all in the details. But why is it necessary to get involved like this? I completely understand that you don't want to have cars stopping on track or slowing dangerously, but could it not have been resolved by, for example, saying that this trick, the lockdown, for example, the lockout of the MGUK isn't applicable in qualifying, so you don't lose the MGUK if you deployed this trick, because you'd only really be using it at the end of the lap anyway, because again, there's only so much energy you've got to play with.
I think the problem is that it's the unintended consequences of decisions. These are super complicated cars, a very complicated rule set, and one decision in one area of the car has consequences for another. So when this continuous offset mode was created, it was originally for emergencies. It was an ability for teams to shut down the MGUK immediately, so no damage could be caused, and it didn't mean that you had to move on to another component set, which then gives you grid penalties. It was never intended to be a competitive advantage, but teams don't base their behaviours on the intention of the rules. They base their behaviours on what gives me a competitive advantage. What can I do within the wording of the regulations? And these regulations allowed this scope. The latch mode, the 60-second lockout period was intended to act as the deterrent. And I think in the end, if the FI started coming out with complicated rules to allow this for qualifying or this for qualifying, it just opens the door. Pandora's box is open, and we could see more tricks getting employed. So I think in the end, this solution, you can only use this software mode in genuine emergencies, is probably the better solution. And I'm actually more surprised it was allowed in the first place, because there were clearly downsides to it, clear, questionable safety elements for having cars with no MGUK for 60 seconds, even on a slowdown lap. So you can argue that this should have been addressed before the season with such a clarification, rather than now.
Well, if it makes more sense to do it this way, that'll only be the case right up until the first manufacturer decides to claim that they've got an emergency on a qualifying lap, and then suddenly the emergency resolves itself. Because by doing it this way, it might make sense, but you then open yourself to what counts as an emergency, and that will be ultimately at the discretion of the FIA. They've got all of the data; they'll be able to monitor this. It may also be, because the trade-off we're talking about here is a very small gain, but with a big potential risk attached to it, as we saw at Suzuka, and it happened in Australia as well. Teams just don't want to go near this, and this is the last we'll have ever heard of it, and therefore, thank goodness we found out about it at Suzuka, because what a fun thing to have talked about. Do you expect it to make any difference? It's not like at the front of the grid we're seeing qualifying positions being decided by half a tenth of a second at the moment. So is this one of those things that's just going to pass into history very, very quietly without fundamentally altering the pecking order, or will it be something that anybody misses?
No, I don't think anyone will miss it. I think there was a clear benefit from doing it. Teams can argue it was a minimal gain. We spoke to a manufacturer in Japan who said it was worth 0.03 of a second, which doesn't sound a lot, but F1 teams are based on 100 elements of 0.03 of a second, makes an awful lot of difference. So, and I think we would have got into a scenario where other manufacturers would have been forced to copy it. We know of one manufacturer that was looking to do it, couldn't get it to work properly. We know Ferrari was aware of it, wanted clarification from the FI before pursuing it. So if everyone's got 0.03 of a second, then it makes no overall competitive difference at all, but then comes with the downside risks of safety, car stopping on track. So it almost makes no sense for anyone to have it. So I think it will disappear. It won't make a difference to the grids, but it's a fascinating technical story. And I think these are always quite fun to, when you find out these things, all these political machinations in the background. And it also shows the lengths that teams will go to for the tiniest amount of lap time.